established in 1912 before the Land Act of 1913, and so it was one of the few places in the city where black people could actually own land and a freehold title. And so it became a springboard of resistance against apartheid. And today, unfortunately, those protests still continue, more around service delivery and infrastructure development. And why does that happen? That's because our informal settlements are the places that absorb our rural-urban migration. Johannesburg is increasing by 3 people an hour. So we're just not building housing fast enough to help these people. Population of Alex is just under 200,000. And to give these numbers some perspective, New York is about 50,000 people per square. Alex is about half that, but remember that Alex is mostly all at a single story. So huge density. Through interview process with our community leadership on site that really have, over 20 decades of experience, we interviewed residents, and the biggest problem was fire. So we started with that as our chief challenge in the design process. Biomimicry is a core philosophy for us as a design practice, and so we started looking at the genius of place. What was the landscape of Johannesburg before the city came? And that was grassland. Very similar to Fynbos, grassland requires fire to keep it ecologically healthy. So that's nature using a destructive event to its advantage. And so we said, can we study species that have adapted to fire and learn from them, translate architectural principle from indigenous species, like this. Isikalaba tree. We can practice our Zulu later. Isikalaba. And that's the high-felt protea, which is one of the few trees that can actually survive in grassland. We translated that into simple principles. Number 1 is scale. Quite a high tree, 3 to 9 meters high, and that's important because it's at the same scale as our housing unit. The bark is thick and fire-resistant. The bark has been used in traditional medicine for stomach ailments. The leaves are a leathery texture. Also highly insulated for frost and water loss, and the flowers are this kind of teacup shape. The flowers are very interesting. They produce more nectar. It kind of drips off the petals, and it's mainly made out of fructose and glucose. And they dry after pollination to form these cones. Now these cones only open after fire. They can stay in a tree for years. And so the building responds to fire. Once the cones open, wind dispersion for the seeds, and we think that's because after fire, the residue that's left is highly nutritious for seeds to germinate. And so we took these architectural principles into Alex. Alex is an incredible informal settlement. Along with other informal settlements in the country, space is negotiated by neighbors. There's this gentle transition between public and private space through multiple layers. And the little red block is our site, and it's about a stone's throw away from where Nelson Mandela rented his home in Alex. We started very early on by looking at prefabricated materials, something that could be clipped into the existing footprint. CLT, cross-laminated timber, was quite a good choice for us. And then we looked at renewables. Our project brief was net positive carbon and net positive water that required 3 kilowatt solar system with about 30,000 liters of rainwater storage. And what's important is, how do we translate that into the incredible microeconomy of informal settlements? How could we provide resources that weren't there that people actually needed? We first thought we could sell the power naively, but most people in Alex actually don't pay for utilities. They get water and electricity for free. So we spoke to people, they desired Wi-Fi, that's one of the contributions that we made, and we started to take our net positive water to generate indigenous food substances and apiculture. That obviously translates into what we call the ecology of the building. The CLT kind of clips on the top. We taken these yards, these public spaces onto the first floor, and started to integrate apiculture, including locally found fruiting plants. This is the stampvrug milk plum, which is an amazing plant, super high in vitamin C, and can be used to make brandy, wine, a whole lot of things that can be sold. Wild jasmine, indigenous species that really helps with the smell. If you ever walked in an informal settlement, the smell of sewage is quite strong. And that's all clad with, again, a thick bark layer, as we call it, of hempcrete and corrugated iron on the outside. It's kind of internal finishing of what we're looking at. And the building must respond to fire, like the protea. And so let me just end with this, 1 minute left. In less than 100 years, us as Africans seem to have forgotten the incredible knowledge that surrounds us in our indigenous species. And I believe sustainability is not some new endeavor or rating or technology, but is more for us about remembering who we are by understanding where we have come from. And that said, for too long, green buildings have been designed solely for the rich. Should not the majority of our vulnerable population be the focus of our efforts? So let's remember who we are, how much knowledge surrounds us, and implement sustainability in the true definition of Ubuntu. Thank you.